You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 183 of the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm the host of this weekly podcast about all things Japan. I'm really happy to have you guys here this week. In episode number 183, we're going to be talking with Tom from the Being Kansai Twitter feed. Now, the Being Kansai Twitter feed is an amazing source of all things Kansai. News, events, a lot of events, festivals, concerts, comedy stuff, food, seasonal things, you name it. Go check out at Being Kansai on Twitter. And also go check out at Kansai Tom. These are great places to find out lots of wonderful information about the Kansai area of Japan. Now, Tom is no stranger to the Just Japan podcast. This is his second time on the show, and we're really happy to have him back. And this week we're going to be talking about seasons in Japan. It's something we've touched on before in different episodes, but right now we're going to be talking more specifically about different kind of events that stand out in each season in Japan, how people can cope with different seasons, how people can enjoy different seasons, and we also talk about seasonal foods and different seasonal treats here in Japan, because that's one thing about Japan that kind of sets it apart from some other places in the world, is that the seasons are a really big deal. Now, I know that there are other countries that do take great pride in seasonal changes, but the very distinctive types of festivals that Japan has, things like Hanami or dance matsuris in the summertime, or the different types of seasonal food and beverages, they're very kind of distinctly Japanese, and we're going to be talking about that a lot more very soon. So stay tuned. Now, of course, you can find the Just Japan podcast on all major podcatchers. Just do a Google search for Just Japan podcast if you want to find out all the ways of finding where we are. Another great way is to go to the launching pad of the Just Japan podcast, justjapanstuff.com, justjapanstuff.com. Go there, check it out. We're all over the place on social media. I'm very active on Twitter at JLandKev, the Facebook page, facebook.com/justjapanstuff. And of course, go check out my YouTube channel, Busan Kevin. Do a search for Busan Kevin on YouTube. And you're saying, hey, what's a Busan, Kevin? Isn't Busan a city in Korea? Yes, it is. And that's where I was living back in 2006 when I started being a YouTube video blogger. So, of course, a lot of the content up there at the moment, the current content is China-related content, because I do call Beijing home at the moment and for the next little while. So I'm making a series of videos about life in Beijing. But of course, for basically 10 years, my first 10 years as a YouTuber, I was based in Japan. So there are literally thousands of videos about Japan. Go check it out. Surf through, do a search for like Busan Kevin food, Busan Kevin Kobe, Japan, Busan Kevin Osaka, Busan Kevin exploring. And you'll find lots of fun stuff about Japan, lots of great Japan content. And again, for my newer stuff, I'm doing a lot of food reviews these days. I'm starting to do regular food reviews here in China, snack reviews. And of course, I was in Japan for winter holiday. I'll be there again for part of my summer holiday, and there'll be lots of video content coming up around those times. Again, lots of announcements coming out, specific date to come very soon. Actually, hold on till the end of this episode, and I will have a date to throw out for you. But this June, near the end of June, there will be a Just Japan podcast meetup happening in Kobe, Japan. That's right, another meetup. We had one December of 2016, had one in December of 2017, just during my winter holiday at the Harbor Tavern in Kobe. Had a great turnout. Some amazing people came. I was so excited to meet a lot of great folks. And we'll be having another Just Japan podcast meetup in Kobe this June coming up, near the end of June. So hold on to the end of the episode, and I'll have a date for you. All right, folks, so now it's the time of the podcast where I sit down with a guest and we chat about a different aspect of life in Japan. This week, we talk about seasons, seasonal changes, seasonal events, and foods in Japan with Tom from the @Being Kansai Twitter feed. All right, folks, so it's episode 183 of the podcast, Just Japan podcast. We're going to be talking about changing seasons in Japan and all of the stuff that goes along with the changing of seasons. And we've got returning guest Tom from Being Kansai on Twitter and Kansai Tom on Twitter. Tom, thank you for joining us again.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So before we jump into the main kind of topic here, there are definitely people who are joining us for the first time. This is their first taste of the Just Japan podcast. They may not have listened to the episode that you were on previously. So, in a nutshell, could you tell the listeners out there just a little bit about yourself and where you are in Japan?
Yeah, my name's Tom. I'm living in Hirakata, which is on the border of Kyoto and Osaka in the Kansai region. And so I have a Twitter account. I run a Twitter account called Being Kansai, where I just post about news and different places and things happening in Kansai. And every once in a while, someone will take over and take over for a week and tweet about their time or their experience in Kansai. So that's the main thing I'm known for, I guess.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a special name for that kind of Twitter account, right?
Oh yes, it's called a Roker, rotation curation, I think it is.
Okay.
So yeah, I modeled mine out after Being Tokyo.
Okay.
But they usually have a different person every week. While with Being Kansai, it's more like I do it most of the time. We usually have a guest about once or twice a month.
Okay. Yeah, no, I had the opportunity last fall to do this kind of thing. I took over the We Are Expats
really?
account for 1 week, and that was really interesting. That was a bizarre dynamic because they've got this like kind of built-in audience. They've got this group of people who are, I mean, I'm not sure why they're there following or what the deal is, but it was like right away, I got in there and I'm just tweeting about what I do in the day and kind of like what I do in the Just Japan at my Jland Kev Twitter feed. But then I started like a new episode of the podcast came out and I started kind of like, like here's a new podcast and this and that. And that really seemed to irritate some people. Like, don't come on.
Some people, yeah.
They're like, don't come on here trying to sell your stuff and trying to promote yourself.
Okay. Yeah, some people can get a little bit uptight about it. Luckily, the Being Kansai account, I guess, isn't big enough yet to have that many complaints about stuff like that. So that's probably a good thing. But yeah, some of the bigger accounts like that, people can get pretty testy about little things like that too.
Yeah.
So I try to keep it kind of relaxed and just laid back, and we're just spreading some information about stuff happening in Kansai, and that's people have different opinions, but that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, folks out there listening, I would say that like if you're interested in the Kansai region of Japan, what's happening, cultural stuff, entertainment stuff, and just what's happening. Definitely follow at Being Kansai, and I think like at Kansai Photos is another great one too.
He's great. I get a lot of information from him, and we often end up going to the same kind of events and stuff. So I definitely give him a follow too. Yeah. Even if you're not in Kansai, that's one of the good things about him. His photos are great. So
yeah, true.
Even though he's based in Kansai, I think everybody would be interested in the kind of stuff he posts about.
Yeah, if you're simply interested in Japan.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, the reason why I wanted you to come back on the podcast is just because over the last couple of weeks, I've been I've always been following what you do, but I mean, I've been looking at your Hanami pictures, your Sakura pictures, your cherry blossoms. And they got some pretty nice cherry blossoms here in Beijing as well. But one thing that they don't have is the culture of Hanami, or the culture of actually kind of appreciating them, so to speak.
Yes.
They're around and they're pretty, and you do see some people taking pictures of them in the bigger parks. But as at the end of the day, I kind of get the impression that you get all these beautiful blossoms, but just kind of life goes on as normal. You don't see the kind of that's not part of the culture here in China. And after 10 years in Japan, I got to admit, like I just miss it like crazy because that's probably one of my favorite times of year. I just love Hanami season. So
it's a great time.
So for those out there, for the uninitiated, what would you say? What is Hanami in a nutshell?
Basically, it's the time of year in the spring. Usually, it depends on the weather, and where you are in Japan. But it's when the cherry blossoms, which are also called sakura in Japanese, it's when they bloom, and the Japanese tend to use this as an opportunity to have little picnics underneath the cherry blossom trees,
Hmm.
and it's really hard to overstate how big a deal it is, because it's one of these things that everybody does. If you're in school, you do it with your friends, your sports club. If you do it, if you're working, you do it with your coworkers. If you're a housewife or something, you do it with other housewives. It's people will go to tons of them,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they'll do karaoke under the trees, or they'll, a lot of drinking and just partying and things, and it's just and then other places where you can't necessarily have picnics, but like famous temples and places like that, castles, people will go and just take millions of pictures, because it's you know for a lot of Japanese, they really think it's the peak. They consider it to be the peak of the year, I think, in terms of the best seasons. There's a lot of appreciations for all the different seasons, but I think a lot of Japanese and a lot of tourists who come into the country around this time, this really is the best season for photography and for having parties and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, I mean, from what I hear, I mean, often the sakura, the cherry blossoms represent like a new beginning. And
yeah, because yeah, exactly, it sort of represents an ending and a beginning, because for a lot of people, they'll be graduating from college or school or high school, or what, or maybe switching jobs because it's the end of the school year and the end of the work year, and maybe starting a new job. There are these big ceremonies for company workers joining new companies. So it's kind of this bittersweet time, because you're kind of maybe you're happy to be starting something new, but you're also kind of missing what's ending. And
yeah,
the sakura, because they only bloom for about a week, or 2 weeks, they sort of represent that kind of mixed feeling of, they're beautiful, but it's also kind of sad because they don't last that long. So they represent both the coming of spring, but the ending of the winter, I guess. So
yeah,
very, very symbolic in a lot of different ways.
yeah. And I mean, like there's a lot of symbolism there. Obviously, like you said, the end of the school year, the end of the fiscal year, in
Yeah.
March, and then like the very beginning of April, you've got the new school year begins. I see lots of pictures on my Facebook of my friends in Japan where they got children who are starting elementary school or starting kindergarten, and they have the big entrance ceremonies, which are a huge deal.
Yep.
Um, but like I said, just at the end of the day, the Hanami, they're just great cherry blossom parties and picnics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And because like a lot of people have their goodbye party as the Hanami party, or their welcome party for new workers or things like that. It kind of doubles for a different different kinds of parties.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I checked into this a little bit, I could be wrong, but I checked into whether the sakura, the cherry blossom, is the national flower of Japan, because I heard it was, but I'd also heard the chrysanthemum was.
Mm.
And apparently there's kind of a rivalry between the two, and there isn't an official flower, but those are the two candidates, I would say.
Isn't the
So I'm
chrysanthemum?
actually,
Isn't that
yeah.
kind of more a symbol of like the emperor, the royal family?
Yes, yes, but it is also like on Japanese passports, they always have it on the
Ah,
on the
true,
front cover.
true, true, true.
But just for just to check, I threw up a poll on Being Kansai, and just to for as an example, which flower do you think should be considered Japan's national flower? And the sakura, the cherry blossom, is winning about 80% to 20%. So
Mm.
that gives you a little bit of an idea, even just on a little poll like that,
In the court of public
how
opinion.
popular it is. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, exactly.
nice, nice, nice. I love the little Twitter polls. I need to use more of those. Um,
Yeah, they can be kind of interesting, surprising sometimes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so again, I saw some of your photos. There was one you put up maybe yesterday. I saw of like the cherry blossoms all falling off, and you said cherry blossom season's coming to an end. Um,
Yeah.
Now, as it wraps up, and I was always sad about that, but as it wraps up, then
Hmm.
we march towards summer in Japan. So,
Yes.
in the Kansai region where you live, tell me, what is summer like, weather-wise, anyway? Or how does it
Yeah.
how does it feel being there?
It's a rough. It's not one of my favorite seasons. It's pretty humid and pretty hot, and even after being here so long, I still haven't really. I've been here, a good more than 15, 16 years, but it's a hard adjustment to make. It's just so hot and so humid, and
And it comes
you can
quick,
try
doesn't it?
different things. Yeah, it kind of comes out of nowhere. We've had kind of a cool spring, but yeah, all of a sudden it hits, and you just gotta, sometimes the trains and stores and restaurants haven't adapted yet, so there's no air conditioning, and the trains will be steamed up with sweat, and then it's rough when it just comes out of nowhere like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But there are
mhm,
yeah,
continue. Go ahead.
there are some things that you can do to try to deal with it, and one of the things I think the Japanese government started maybe about 10 years ago or so was Cool Biz,
Hmm.
which is cool business, which is for office workers or salary men or office ladies, where they can wear slightly less formal clothes that are a bit cooler. So for men, like they wouldn't have to wear neckties or suit jackets. So there is that there are clothing companies trying to like deal with helping people deal with the summer heat to some extent. And Cool Biz is one that I think it started about 10 years ago, but it still seems to be going on. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I
I
mean,
think
like,
it's
I think like
helping.
the kind of like image we have of a Japanese salaryman is, like the black suit, dark tie, white shirt. But
Yeah,
once Cool Biz clicks in, you see them, they're wearing the short sleeve business shirts with no tie. Um,
yeah,
but even like some of the clothes I wear now, I bought quite a bit at Uniqlo. So
yeah. Uniqlo, big
yeah,
one.
so like I had to my last job in Japan, I had to wear a shirt and tie every day,
Yeah,
5 days a week, and slacks too. So kind of like that business casual look. Um,
yeah,
but once summer came, we were allowed to wear Cool Biz, and they have at Uniqlo all the kind of Cool Biz dress shirts and the slacks, which like wick away the sweat.
yeah.
So
That helps a lot.
it does
I
help a
know
lot. They make life a lot more, well, how should I say,
bearable.
somewhat less miserable.
Yeah. I know for a while there, like some necktie companies were complaining because their sales were going down so much due to Cool Biz, but maybe they've the last few years I haven't heard about it, so maybe they were able to adapt. But yeah, I think people are really happy to give them take a break from neckties at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one kind of important thing to mention to the listeners out there, if you've never been to Japan, is that for the most part in Japanese office buildings, houses, homes, apartments, there is essentially no such thing as central air, right?
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately.
So within like an office or within your own house, what do you do to try to cool that place down?
I mean, I use a lot of fans. Actually, even when one thing I've embraced is like the little Japanese folding fan, because I'm even on the train, like just that little folding fan can make a big difference to me.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, and I usually tend to have the air conditioner going pretty strong as much as possible, and I end up staying in the smallest room in my house because that one is the easiest to keep cold for most of the time. But when I go out though, I often try to go swimming sometimes, and up in Shiga, there's some nice little beaches around Biwa Lake,
okay, yeah.
which I would recommend if it's hot and you want to go swimming, because unfortunately the ocean around Osaka or Kyoto is not the cleanest and nicest. There just really aren't that many actual beaches, so it can be kind of hard to find places to go swimming when it's really hot out. But yeah, the north of Biwa Lake is surprisingly nice. I didn't check it out for a while. I didn't check it out for a couple of years until one day it was just so hot. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check it out, and it was a lot nicer than I expected. So that's one
Nice.
place I definitely recommend.
I know, like when I was living in Kobe, of course, there are quite a few beaches or a few beaches between Kobe and Akashi. You got like a
Yeah,
Suma, there's like Maiko Beach, there's Okura Kaigan and Akashi. And the thing is, like, I think like the water moving through the Akashi Strait is actually pretty clean. It's pretty
yeah,
fast moving water. But I mean, so you get in the water, you're all set. But the one thing I found is that those beaches are like radioactive hot.
yeah. That too.
Like
That too.
there's no cover. I can remember
There's no
going.
shade.
No shade at all.
Yeah,
I can remember even going there with like how you can get those the little kind of family tents with a
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
open front. We'd go there with one of those and we were still miserable.
See, that's what I like about Biwa Lake is that you've got some cool breezes coming down from the mountains and a little bit more there's a few more trees and things. But yeah, even sometimes even the lake is just too hot. But another nice thing is the what they call the kawa doko, where they'll in the summer they set up, some restaurants and cafes will set up little wooden platforms over like little rivers, little streams, and you can eat above the river, and you get this nice cool breeze. It kind of really cools you down, and that's kind of popular up in Kyoto and in near the Kibune area and the Kamogawa area. So if you're here in the summer and want to have a nice cool dinner or lunch, but you don't want to be sitting in the air conditioning, that's something to check out.
I can remember years ago my wife and I doing that at the was it Arashiyama? No, where was it? There's a river in Kyoto, the famous bridge, footbridge.
Yeah, might be Arashiyama, might be Kibune.
I think Arashiyama. I think it was Arashiyama. Yeah. We went there, and we walked down along the river, and we ate at one of those places, and it was really lovely. The view of, So, yeah, check that out in Kyoto, folks, and other places that Tom knows more of than I do.
Another place not in Kansai, but I like to recommend to people is down in Kochi in Shikoku. There's a river called the Shimanto River, and apparently it's one of the like last pure, like kind of untouched, no concrete rivers in Japan. And I've gone down there in the summer, and it's really nice. It's quite far, but it's worth the trip, I'd say. And if you go to Kochi, you can also go to some of the beaches down there. They have surfing, and the water is, at least to me, quite clean and nice. So
yeah, I mean,
if you have more time to travel, that's a great place to go to.
I've heard that Kochi has got like a really great reputation if you're like really into the outdoors. So if you're into like whitewater rafting and like hiking and camping and all that kind of stuff, I heard that's really the place to go, or one of the places to go in Japan.
And sometimes when you take the bus there or something, you get off the bus and it just feels so much cooler as soon as you get off the bus, because you're not in the big kind of urban area anymore. It's amazing. Maybe it's just it could just be a trick or something, but it really feels a lot cooler.
Nice. So getting out of the city can help, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you're living in a
thing. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're living in a big city like Osaka or something like that, you've got that whole kind of heat island thing happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in Kyoto, because they're in a kind of a valley, the heat gets kind of trapped in there. So especially in Kyoto, out of Kansai, it's a very tough place to be in the summer sometimes.
Ooh, yeah. Cool, I guess, in a hot way.
But yeah, another thing in the summer is they have a baseball tournament in Koshien. That's a good excuse, I think, for a lot of people to just stay inside watching TV all day and just enjoy the air conditioning.
I suppose so, right? Yeah, it's a really good excuse because there's nothing more exciting than high school baseball in Japan. I'm not being sarcastic about that, folks. Like high school baseball, the two Koshien tournaments every year, like it's like some of the most gripping and dramatic stuff you're gonna see.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like March Madness and like college football, everything like just thrown into one. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, so we sweat our way through summer, and we crawl ourselves out of we crawl out of summer, and then there's fall. So can you tell the listeners a little bit what is fall like in your neck of the woods in Japan, and just what's the deal with fall?
Well, fall, the big deal, spring, the big deal is cherry blossoms, but fall, the big thing is the colored leaves, which they call koyo. And they don't really tend to have any parties outside or picnics, but people do tend to swarm to a lot of the temples that have really nice colored leaves, and it can get pretty crowded. So it's a really nice season. But
there's a koyo, and then there's when the maple trees. There's like something people are even more very specific about, right? The momiji.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one place I like to recommend to people in Osaka. Osaka has an image as not really having many parks and not a lot of greenery, but there's a park on the outskirts called Mino Park.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And there they actually sell tempura, deep fried maple leaves in the fall. So if you want to try something a little quirky, you can eat actual maple leaves in the fall there.
Yeah, there's actually are you familiar with the YouTube channel The Big Story?
Vaguely, yeah. I think I've seen some of their stories.
It's a really, really amazing YouTube channel, I think, with like very inspirational stories. But they actually did one about a family that makes the in Mino that make the
Oh, oh,
momiji
really?
tempura. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. I have to check that
I
out.
watched it a few weeks ago. I'll send you a link to it afterwards. And for you folks out there, I'll put it in the show notes for this
Oh,
episode.
awesome.
So there is a video. It's all in Japanese, but it's got subtitles of.
Have you ever? Oh, sorry. Have you ever actually tried them?
No, I haven't. I've only seen them on like videos and TV and heard about them and read about them, but I've never had the opportunity.
I'll have to pick up some next time. But
I've been
they're
to Minnow,
actually
but I
kind of
haven't tried it.
they're actually kind of sweet. It's weird. They're almost more like cookies to me than what when you think of tempura, like shrimp tempura or something. It's more like almost a cookie, and you
Oh,
don't
really?
really taste the leaf very much. But they're interesting.
Neat. No, I would love to try it. Yeah, yeah. So the video was showing how they collect them all in the fall and how they salt them and prepare them and store them all year long and da 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 da. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Yeah. So and that's a great place to go. Beautiful waterfalls, really great beer, craft beer.
Yeah, it's an area that a lot of people are surprised when they see photos or go there. That way, hey, I'm actually still in Osaka, but yeah, it's a great little place. And
Yeah.
you can sometimes see monkeys, and I think the monkeys there are famous because in the past some of them learned how to use vending machines. Actually, they were actually like buying drinks from vending machines, and there's videos and stuff. So yeah, kind of smarter than your average monkey, I guess.
Yeah, which are pretty smart to begin with.
Yeah.
So I know that also, like, of course, a lot of people will flock to Kyoto during that time of year. To take pictures of the leaves. And I know one of my own personal favorite spots to go to take pictures of the momiji, the maple leaves changing color. If you're in Kobe, go up behind Shin Kobe Station and go hiking up to the Nunobiki Falls and past the Nunobiki Falls to the Kobe Water Reservoir and all along that path. Some great leaves.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
that was my personal favorite place to go. Yeah, so fall. Okay, so we got our fall, and then I know
One thing I was going to say is that
Mhm.
one of the tough things about recently in Kansai, but I'm assuming in a lot of Japan, is there's been a real tourist boom. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, like some of the places I've recommended for years, when I recommend them to people, they're like, "Oh, it was great, but it was so crowded." So recently, I try to recommend things that are a little bit more off the beaten path because those places are great, but a lot of the people who I recommend them to just get really worn out with that kind of thing. So for the fall, another place I just wanted to recommend was
Sure.
Biwa Lake. There's a place that rents bicycles like overnight, and cycling around Biwa Lake. It's called Biwa Ichi. Is a cool way to kind of see some of the small towns and some of the. If you go in the fall, you can see the leaves, and if you do it in the spring, you can see cherry blossoms and cycling around, and you can camp out, or do you have to be careful of bears and wild boar. And there's also cheap places to stay, but that's if you've got a little bit extra time, and maybe like with Golden Week coming up, that's a cool course that I recommend. And people also do they cycle around Awaji Island, and that's called
Yeah.
Awaichi.
Okay. Okay.
And that's another popular way to kind of a little bit away, close to central Kansai, but still getting a little bit more space. But there's still a lot of cool stuff to see.
Yeah, when I was teaching at an international school in Kobe, I had a few students who did the cycling around Awaji Island with family members.
Oh,
So-
cool. I really want to try it, but I haven't done it yet.
I think for me that would be very cool, but I would really love to cycle around Lake Biwa. I've heard that's just fantastic.
I did that, and you don't. There's a bridge towards the south, so it's not the full lake, but it's still long enough. And if you rent the bicycle, I definitely recommend renting the extra cushion, because I rented it, my friends didn't, and I think they're definitely regretting it. Because if you're on the bike that long, and if you're not like a big cyclist,
If you're not used to it, yeah.
yeah, ooh.
No, I'm definitely a recreational cyclist, so
Yeah,
extra cushion noted. Extra cushion,
definitely,
double
Big-
extra cushion.
big tip.
Cool. Yeah, the saddle being saddled sore is not fun. All right, okay. So winter time, we march on to winter. What is winter like? And I got to admit, I lived in the Kansai for 10 years, almost 10 years. Coming to Beijing was a big shock to my system because although there was no snow really,
Mhm.
there was temperatures of minus 15 Celsius, sometimes, yeah. Ugh. I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe winter again, at least in the Kansai region of Japan?
It's relatively mild, especially in the Osaka area and southern Kyoto. Usually don't get too much snow, so it's even though it's pretty mild. And I'm actually from New York, so compared to New York, when I first got here, I was like, oh, this is great, this is like heaven.
Yeah.
But I've been here long enough that I've kind of acclimated, unfortunately, and now I consider it a little bit cold. But I do miss the snow a bit, the snow a bit. So I sometimes recommend people going to certain onsen where you can go to the outdoor baths and you can look at the snow, or sometimes it's snowing and you can just sit there in the outdoor hot bath with the snow falling down. Because in Kansai, yeah, I do miss the snow sometimes. So
What I don't know if this would be considered part of Kansai. Is Kinosaki onsen
yes,
town?
that's in Hyogo. That is actually, yeah, that's one of the places I recommend. And yeah, that is in Kansai, but yeah, the northern area, they get plenty of snow, so that's one of the places I recommend to people. And in Kinosaki, they have this cool thing where they have a bunch of famous onsen, and most of the places that you stay will give you this kind of little pass where you can go to all the different onsen, hop in and hop out, and it's just tons of fun.
Yeah, I've done that with my wife, and I did that pre kids. So that was a lot of fun. I remember we stayed at one onsen, but then we put on like the kind of robes, and you just in the gate, and you can just walk around town.
Yeah,
going from one place
great.
to the, at nighttime. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's not cheap to stay in those kind of onsen towns, but I think it's definitely worth it every once in a while as a kind of a treat. It's definitely
absolutely,
worth it.
Yeah. And I know, like you mentioned, in the northern part of like Hyogo and stuff, I guess basically on the whole Nihonkai, the Sea of Japan.
Exactly.
They definitely get snow.
Definitely. So it's not that far, but yeah, if you want to experience some, it's worth that little trip up there or to different areas.
Okay, yeah. So now, backtrack to summertime. We talked about the kind of, how it can sometimes be a battle to stay cool.
Yeah.
Now, wintertime in Japan, in a Japanese home, a Japanese apartment, how's that? Is that a nice toasty place to live in? Of course, I know the answer to this question. That's very rhetorical for me, but
unfortunately, no. There's not. At least I've heard up in some of the more northern parts of Japan. I've heard legends of houses that have more insulation, or maybe Hokkaido.
Legend would have
it. I haven't been in winter, so I haven't confirmed it for myself. But down here, yeah, a lot of the houses are pretty drafty, and you've got to kind of, there isn't central heating, so you've got to find ways to just kind of stay warm. And for me, the big one is the kotatsu, which is kind of a heated table with a little blanket to kind of trap the heat in. And at first I was like, this will only keep my legs warm, but actually it kind of warms your whole body up, and you can kind of sneak in and snuggle in underneath it too if you really need to. So the problem is it's just very addictive. So you find yourself that when you're at home in the winter when it's cold, just if you have a kotatsu, sometimes you just won't end up moving from it for hours and days, weeks. So
yeah, you know what? I'll be honest here. I've never had a kotatsu.
And did you use other people? I know some people use a hot carpet.
Yes, that's what we use.
Yeah.
My wife.
That's another good alternative.
I know my wife didn't want a kotatsu because she was worried, like when our kids were really young, like when they were toddlers, like not even toddlers, like just crawling around, that something bad might happen. So we definitely had the, of course you have the air conditioning unit, which doubles as a heating unit. We had that.
Yep.
We didn't get space heaters because we were worried about, again, little kids touching them. But
fires,
But what we did buy was the fan heaters.
Oh yeah, those are good.
So those were good. So we had a couple of fan heaters, and then the large heated carpet, which was great because you'd sit on that, and then if you just sat on that and put a blanket on your lap,
that
was kind of like a kotatsu. You'd be nice and toasty, and then you just definitely, whereas in Canada in the middle of the winter, it might be minus 25 outside, but I'd be trotting around the house wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts.
Yeah, same thing in New York. Yeah,
but in Japan, I'm definitely like wearing lots of stuff. And
lots of layers, yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever gone this route, but we always loved it, my wife and I. But Uniqlo has the stuff they call room wear.
Oh, really?
which is essentially big thick fleece jammies.
Yeah.
And I just basically wear fleece jammies around the whole time
Yep.
when I was at my house.
It's kind of funny. Sometimes you get home and you just put on more layers
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
winter
yeah.
as opposed to taking them off.
Because it seems colder inside than outside, right?
Yeah, sometimes it is. I swear in the morning you put on all these clothes and because you're freezing in your house and you step outside in the sun and you're like, whoa, I'm sweating. So it's an eternal battle.
Yes.
But speaking of Uniqlo, the heat tech,
Oh yeah,
not to
yeah.
give them a free commercial or whatever, but I mean, the heat tech stuff they sell is really nice for staying warm too. I definitely give that a recommendation.
Oh yeah. I mean, actually, when we were visiting Japan in December, we were in Kobe and Osaka, and I like to spend time outdoors. I'm a walker. I'm into nature photography and stuff. So here in Beijing, where it's substantially colder, I'd like to be outside. So there's Uniqlo here, but
Oh, cool.
but it's a lot more expensive than in Japan.
Same thing in the States, from what I
Yeah.
can tell.
So
Yeah,
so when we were in Japan, I stocked up. I got like the Heat Tech long johns essentially, and I got a bunch of Heat Tech shirts and stuff. So it's
nice,
definitely good stuff. Definitely good stuff. Um,
definitely nice. Well,
and
if it works in Beijing, then it's the real deal.
Yeah, and it's affordable. I think that's the whole thing. So if you are
Yeah.
planning on moving to Japan or spending some serious time in Japan, folks, if you're gonna be there in the winter, and I mean, there's a good bang for your buck. Uniqlo is a very affordable place in Japan.
Yep.
So the Uniqlo Heat Tech stuff is good. It's good.
Yep.
Okay, so seasonal foods. I'm just curious if obviously Japan, they're into the celebrating the seasons in ways that it's not like that in maybe in America or Canada, but one huge thing in Japan are the seasonal foods and drinks.
Yep.
So with each season, you're gonna get very different kinds of things. When I say that to you, seasonal drinks, seasonal food, what are some of the main things or some examples that really stand out in your mind of things that maybe you notice or that you really enjoy?
Well, let's see. For the summer's coming up, so one of the things which also doubles as a way to cool down is the shaved ice, the kakigori,
Mm.
which I love. They just take a big old block of ice and just shave it and give give it some kind of flavor. Sometimes matcha is the popular one. In Kyoto, there's a lot of great places that sell those, and hojicha I think also is another flavor that's popular.
Okay.
And that's when I think of the summer. In the summer, there's also a day where everyone eats eel
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah.
because apparently
The hottest day of the year or something
yeah, it's supposed to give you stamina or something. So that's
to
another
help you fight through that hot summer, right?
yeah, the summer fatigue. It's summer fatigue. So that's another one. In the spring, there's the takenoko, which is the bamboo shoots,
Mm.
and those are kind of popular. It's kind of hard to describe if you haven't had it, but
I
that's
love
something to check out.
like takenoko gohan, the bamboo
Yeah,
shoot
yeah,
rice. I love
exactly.
that
They
stuff.
just chop it up and throw it in. I guess they cook it and then throw it in some rice, and simple, but it's good. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of sakura cherry blossom like flavored things, but
Hmm.
it's kind of hard to tell if it's actually tastes like sakura.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll get like there'll be all like of course like the Kit Kats of course,
Yeah,
but there's like a lot of like sakura flavored like candies and chocolates, and they all kind of taste a bit different. And
yeah, because they're called cherry blossoms, but it's not like it. They don't taste like cherries. It just tastes kind of salty. It's a little strange, but yeah, it's
yeah,
worth checking out if
and
you're
they're
there. I guess.
pink.
Yeah, there's a lot of pink beer that time of the year too.
That's
A lot
right.
of
That's
cherry
right.
blossom
I think
decorated beer.
when I think of seasonal stuff, I got to be honest. I always think of all the beers in
Yep.
Japan because like every every season, a lot of the big macros, like your Suntory, your Asahi, your Kirin, like they'll have all the cherry blossom labels. Now, often I can't tell the difference between that and a regular
Yeah, the
beer that they sell.
flavor really doesn't like. I think they say it's a different kind or something, but yeah, to
It's
me it
mostly
really
the
just tastes the
packaging,
same.
I think.
Yeah,
I think the fall kind of stands out for me. I think some of the brands like Suntory and Kirin will come out with some kind of little bit bolder tasting, maybe kind of
things. Yeah,
red type beers in the fall.
yeah.
Yeah. I was excited here in Beijing when 7-Eleven, there's a few 7-Elevens around, which that's a Japanese company now, right? 7-Eleven.
Yes.
Had and they all carry like Kirin and Asahi, but they got the the kind of Kirin fall beer that comes out every year in Japan.
Yeah.
They had
Oh,
a bunch
nice.
of that at a local 7-Eleven, and I was really excited to be able to get my hands on some of those.
Yeah, I mean, even though they don't, in my experience, they don't taste very different. I still keep trying them, and I
For
still
me,
try them every
I was
season.
excited. I was like, "Hey, look at that! That's so cool!" And you're right; it's definitely
Yeah,
doesn't hold a candle to a craft beer. But it's I don't know. Maybe it was just kind of like, oh, there's something familiar.
it's kind of become a tradition, I guess. At this,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost like Christmas in like those seasonal beers come out earlier and earlier. It seems to me. Like I feel like it's the middle
yeah.
of summer and already the fall beers are out sometimes.
True,
So
true.
I'm like, wow, but they're still a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think there's this one Sapporo one. I think it's called Winter's Tale or something, and I'd see that out like in the end of September or something. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like the
exactly.
fall has just begun and the winter beer is here. What?
Exactly. Another thing is oden in the winter,
Ah, yeah.
which oden is sort of like little different pieces of food on skewers, and they kind of just let it soak in this soup or kind of this broth,
Mm-hmm.
and you just pick up some of the skewers and pour some of the broth in, and things like eggs, boiled eggs, and konyaku, I think, and
Chikwa and stuff.
chikwa. Yeah, just a lot of random things, but it's good. You can dab some mustard on it, some karashi mustard.
Yep.
Uh, it doesn't sound super appetizing, but when the winter comes, it's fun. It's fun to eat.
Yeah, that reminds me actually, I was thinking of it popped into my mind right now, soba, like the buckwheat noodles. So like,
Mm,
around the time of year where it is now for you guys,
yeah,
and leading into summer, cold soba noodles. That's what people like to eat,
yeah,
which are
yeah,
so refreshing. That's like one of my favorite treats, cold soba noodles. But
yeah. Sometimes they'll like throw little bits of ice in it, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
but as you head into the fall towards the winter, then you would never eat cold soba noodles. You're going to eat it in a hot broth, right?
yeah. That's
So
kind of cool how a lot of the different soups they have the different versions like that, and they have the udon noodles, which you can in the summer you can just dip into this cold broth. So
yeah.
pretty cool.
But again, in the colder months, you're going to be eating it in a nice hot soup.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting hungry. Nice, nice. So,
yeah,
so the seasons in Japan are, definitely celebrated by the people of Japan, and I
definitely,
suppose
definitely.
in a way that they aren't back home.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's just so many different specific events. Another one this summer is beer gardens, which I
Mm,
guess originally comes from Europe or Germany, but that's a big thing here, and that's where they'll have these beer gardens on the top of big buildings in the cities, and
mm-hmm.
it's a big cooler because the wind you get more of a draft, and there's there's always something you can just forget about that. Oh yeah, that's what they do this season or that season.
Well,
So
yeah, I suppose the summer festivals, all the summer matsuri,
yep, another one.
the bone festivals, all the dance festivals, right?
And they have the fireworks festivals in the summer too,
Yep, lots of.
which are pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they definitely go big with the hanabi. Yeah, yeah, very cool. So, I mean, that's the thing, guys. I suppose it doesn't matter what season you're going to be heading to Japan. There's going to be lots to see, lots to do. They all have their pluses and their minuses. Maybe in the summer it could be a
Yeah.
little too hot sometimes for some people. Maybe in the winter it might be a little bit of a challenge to stay warm. But there's always lots of delicious food to eat and different things to try and places to go to see really cool things.
The only season I try to tell people to really avoid is rainy season,
Oh,
that which is the end of June around in Kansai. And that's the one season where like if you can really avoid it, maybe try not to come around then.
so June can be a a wet month.
Yeah, it's one of these things. Depending on the year, sometimes you get more rainfall than others, but that can be tough when people want to go out to temples and shrines and castles and stuff, and
True,
it's just
true.
raining a lot. So that can be a bit tough. But there's always tons of cool. It's a good time to check out the museums in Japan.
I suppose so, right?
Yeah,
Lots of indoor activities.
do a lot of shopping. Do some check out the malls.
Go to Japan, check out the malls. That's why we go there. Cool. Well, I mean, hey Tom, thank you so much for stopping by the podcast and
No
sharing
problem.
your insights with us this evening about Japan and all the seasons and stuff.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So one more time, if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
You can check at Being Kansai, and it's also at Being Kansai on Instagram.
Hmm.
And if you're interested, if you're going to be visiting Kansai or you live here, and you'd like to curate for a week or a couple of days or something, you can contact me at Kansai Tom. and I can help you set up and schedule that too.
Awesome. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
All right, I want to thank Tom for coming back on the Just Japan podcast to talk about a lot of cool things about Japan, about the seasons, the different types of food that are available, different ways we cope with the summer heat or deal with the cold of winter, especially indoors. And to talk about great things like summer festivals and, of course, Hanami, cherry blossom viewing. It was great, again, to have you on. Thank you, Tom, for taking the time. Of course, you can find him on Twitter at Being Kansai. And if he's not on the account that week, if there's a different person who's managing the at Being Kansai account, of course, you can find him at Kansai Tom on Twitter. So go follow those feeds. Also, in the podcast, we mentioned the at Kansai Photos feed. That's another great source of information about events happening in the Kansai region. So go to at Kansai Photos. Check that out. Do a Google search. Go to Google and type in Kansai Photos, and you'll find his blog, a great blog chocked with a lot of great photos and a lot of great information about festivals in and around the Kansai area. Well, that does it for another week of the Just Japan podcast. Now, earlier in the episode, I mentioned that I would have a date for you with regards to the 2018 June meetup. But first of all, I want to get a bit of your feedback. I'm going to be in the Kobe area from about the 16th or 17th of June until about the 30th of June. Both my kids will be attending school during that period. They're going to, it's one cool thing that you can do in Japan is you can put your kids in public school for a couple of weeks, which is great for them to reconnect with old friends and, make sure that their Japanese chops are up to snuff. So I'll be there for a couple of weeks essentially. And I wonder what works best for you, a weeknight or a weekend? So a weekend afternoon going into the evening or a weekday evening? What do you think? What's best for you guys? So send me some feedback on the Facebook page or on Twitter, or email me at justjapanpodcast@gmail.com and let me know. I'm going to put up, I'm going to tweet about that. I'm also going to put that up on the Facebook page and get people's feedback and see what works best for them. A weeknight evening, or a weekend afternoon into evening. The one thing is I have a couple of weekends free while I'm there, but there may be some family obligations, so I'm not sure 100% yet. So let me know, send me some feedback on that, guys, and I'll get a date locked ASAP. All right, guys, well, that does it for another episode of the Just Japan podcast, everything you want to know about Japan. My name's Kevin. I'm a Canadian who is currently based in Beijing, China, but called Japan my home for 10 years. So, every week I'm bringing you lots of coolness about Japan. So, of course, you can just do a Google search for Just Japan podcast. We're all over the place. Remember, if you like the podcast and you're new to it, go to the Apple iTunes Store or Apple Podcasts and leave a really kind review. It helps us. Also, you can, of course, find me on Twitter at JLandKev. You can go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/justjapanstuff that's a great source of Japan news. It's an always growing, expanding feed of Japan-related news stories that I update daily. So go check that out. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to download this episode. Thank you for taking the time for being so awesome. So whoever you are in the world, hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. I'll be talking to you real soon.